Well, now, as Miss Mary said, I've been at SBA for 27 years. So small business is kind of my thing, my passion, in a positive way. And what I want to speak today about, of course, our theme is leadership, and I want to talk about leadership and how it relates to business. Now, I've never owned a business myself, but like I said, I've been at SBA for 27 years, so I know a few things, maybe not enough to run my own, but I do know a few things. And leadership is not only, as you've heard from our first two speakers, being an entrepreneur, a boss, a supervisor. You can find leadership roles in being an employee, stay-at-home mom. In anything that you do, you can be an influence on someone else. You can be a leader in that role. Now, I'd like to share with you a quote from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. We at SBA kind of have a soft spot for OI because he is the one who was instrumental in getting SBA started back in 1953, I believe it was, so we've been around for a few years now. But one thing that President Eisenhower once said was, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he or she wants to do it. Now that kind of made me think of the story of Tom Sawyer. You know, he got in trouble with Aunt Polly and she made him paint the fence as part of his punishment. But smart little Tom, he figured out how to get some of the other kids to paint the fence for him. And not only that, give him stuff for the privilege of painting that fence. I think that's what President Eisenhower was kind of getting to in his quote. Now, from my experience, I look at leadership in business more from the aspect of two bosses that I've had in my career, that I've had the pleasure and the displeasure of serving for. We'll just call them Boss A and Boss B. Now, Boss A, she was fantastic. Oh, and I should say, they're both women. When they started in the positions, they were about the same age that each one had started in. So it wasn't, like one was very young and one was much older when they started in that career. But they had very different ideas on how to lead, what leadership was. Boss A was fantastic, loved her to death. I felt like I really grew under her. And just to give you an idea of what the climate was, I started in the office in '91, so this is only 3 years after HR 5050. And if you're not familiar with what HR 5050 is, we're celebrating 30 years, and that is the Women's Business Ownership Act, where not only did our women's business centers come into existence with SBA, they are business assistance centers for women who are looking, and men, we serve everybody equally, but they are specific centers to help women to get the counseling, the coaching, the assistance they need in starting that business. Would you believe also that in as early as or as recent as the 1980s, women could not get a business loan all on their own? They had to have a male relative sign on the loan for them. We're not talking the 1950s, we're talking the 1980s. Now, there was no law out there saying that they couldn't get a loan. It was just the business practice. You had to have your dad, your husband, it could even be your 17-year-old son sign a loan for you. And not only that, you were probably charged a higher interest rate, had to put more money down, and it took a lot longer than if a man went to get a loan for the same sort of business. So in 1988, when HR 5050 came along, that kind of changed the scheme of things, or started working on changing the scheme of things for women. But our office, like I said, had only been 3 years before. So when I came along in '91, it was still a good old boys, club. It was old school, all male managers. The guys ruled the world. So when we had a woman boss come in, this was great. We're going to mix it up a little bit. And she did. She changed the climate a lot in the office. I learned so much and grew so much with her. Fantastic woman, just fantastic. She encouraged and enabled me to improve myself, to get a higher position. If it wasn't for her, I probably would not be here today. I either wouldn't be with the agency, or I would not be in a position that I would be allowed to come out and talk to people. Now, after she retired, Boss B came along. She was the exact opposite. You would think both women, have to fight to get to the positions that they're in. She would be more understanding. No. She was the epitome of a micromanager. I found myself second-guessing myself, thinking, how did I get along this far? Because she was always telling me I was doing it wrong. That wasn't right. Well, I figured out eventually it wasn't me that had the problem, it was her. She was the one that didn't have the self-confidence. So some people really aren't good for a leadership position. I'm afraid Boss B was that one. Now you can argue, different people, different personalities, different ways of leading, and that's true. And for a couple of years, I tried to tell everybody else in the office, give her a chance, Different person, different personality, just give her a chance. Well, then when I finally figured her out, my theme then around the office was, okay, I've done my heels in the sand, I'm not leaving, I'm taking a stubborn streak, and I'm waiting her out. I was here first, and don't leave me because, misery loves company. We're going to wait her out, and we did. So what does make a great leader? I have two bosses, same position, close, same age, both women. What made the difference with them? Well, what I want to give you today are 7 traits. Now, if you talk to a dozen people, you probably get a dozen different ideas on what makes a good leader. If you talk to 100 people, you have probably 100 different traits or skills or ideas on what makes a good leader. We're just going to cover 7, and this is from my personal experience with Boss A and Boss B. First is leading by example. Pitch in where you can. Get your hands dirty. Help out. Don't ask your team to do anything that you wouldn't do. That's Boss A. She did all those things. Don't take the attitude of, I'm too good for that. I can't do that. That's beneath me. That's Boss B. She did those things. She let it be known that she was much better than the rest of us in there. It didn't matter what anyone's background was, anything. Did not matter to her. She was the top dog, and the rest of us were just the dirt under her feet, basically. Second of all, have passion. And have passion in that positive way. I know we heard earlier that passion could be more of a negative thing, but have passion in a positive way. And I don't mean you have to be, constantly cheery or huggy, touchy-feely with people. But believe in what you're doing and what your business or your mission is. If you believe in that and you have passion, it's going to come through in your team. You can inspire so much in others, just with your own passion and your enthusiasm. I speak to entrepreneurs all the time, and I love to hear their passion. I can tell the ones that are really going to make it because they have that passion. They may just have kind of an idea up here yet, and they're like, oh, I've been thinking about this for years, but I think this is time. And I tell them, yeah, it is. I can tell. It's time. Let's run with this. So just having that enthusiasm and that passion, that's part of why I wouldn't give up and leave when Boss B came along. It's because I loved what I did, and I love the passion and enthusiasm from our entrepreneurs. So yeah, I took the stubborn streak, and like I said, I waited her out, and I'm still here, and she's retired, thank goodness. Number 3, delegate. You can't do it all by yourself. That's why you have a team. That's what they're there for. And trust your team. Trust that the work that you have given them, that they can do. Show them that you're there, you believe in them. Like we heard earlier, guys will apply for jobs that they have like this much experience or knowledge or whatever it is that's required. Whereas women, if we don't have 100% of it, we don't go for it generally. With Boss A, I was encouraged to go for it. Learn. That's what we're here for. That's why they have classes, and so that you can learn. Boss B, she'd give you a task, and then she'd stand over you the entire time. And sometimes literally, not just figuratively. One time I was a public information officer, which meant I wrote success stories. She wouldn't let me write them the way I wanted to write them. And I would give her a press release. We have annual events, so I learned might as well just use the one from the year before, because whatever I write is not going to be right, because she rewrote it so much the year before. Funny thing is, I give her the same exact press release for the same sort of program a year later. Oh, well, this isn't right. No, what do you mean? That's not correct. It's your words from last year. They changed. So yeah, like I said, she was a micromanager. Number 4, communicate effectively. Communication is key in any relationship. I don't care if you're just talking your boss, a coworker, the coffee barista at Starbucks. Communication is key in whatever you're doing. And certainly with your team, you want to communicate well. If you don't know what's going on with your team, then how do you know what's going on in your business exactly, or whatever it is you're looking to do? And don't forget to let them know that you appreciate what they're doing, that they're doing a good job. You know, the word thank you is such a small thing, but it makes such a huge impact. Now, Boss B one time told me, you know, I'm also a union official in our office and trying to raise morale after she killed it and then stomped it into the ground. So we were talking one day and I said, you know, saying thank you to somebody is such a small thing and it goes a long ways, you know, just trying to kind of help her a little bit. Well, her response was, why am I going to tell somebody thank you for doing their job? We get paid very well for what we do. Yes, you're correct. As federal employees, we are paid very well. But, you know, just saying thank you to someone, thank you, you did a great job, that can make a huge difference. That was Boss A. She would certainly come and tell you anytime, you know, you did something good, or if you were doing your job well, she'd say, thanks for helping out with that. You know, thanks for what you do. And that would make my day. Sometimes it'd make my week. Just to know that the big boss in the office took the time to tell me thank you. Also, listen. That's a big part of being a great communicator, is listening. If all you're doing is talking, that's no good. You've got to listen to it and actively listen. You've got to listen to what your people are trying to tell you. Communication is a two-way street. If you're not actively listening, you're cutting people off, you're showing that you really don't care. And that's not a good thing. That's a big morale killer. Did I mention how Boss B killed morale in our office for a long time? Because she would ask you a question. She'd ask your opinion on something, and if you started to give your opinion, and it wasn't her opinion, you differed in what she thought the answer should be, she'd just cut you off and go on, because you weren't telling her what she wanted to hear, so don't waste her time. Also, know your people and care about them. Now, you don't have to be BFFs, but you need to know what makes your people tick, what's going on in their personal life, because that can affect their work life. Now, it's been a good 15 years probably since Boss A was in our office, and I can tell you today, if you asked her, she could tell you what my kids' names are. She'd probably tell you at least my daughter's middle name, because it happens to be her middle name also. But she can also tell you how old they are. Boss B, I bet it took her a good 2 years just to remember that I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, let alone what their names are. Not even close to being able to tell you how old they are. Then, when she was in the office, let alone now. That's because Boss A cared. She cared about her people, and she cared about what was going on. Boss B, she couldn't be troubled. You know, she was there to make a name for herself, get that paycheck, and that was it. We were there just to make her look good, basically. And number 7 on my list of 7 traits to think about as a leader is be a follower. Now that seems kind of strange, doesn't it? To be a leader but yet a follower. If you're a leader without following, then you're just a dictator. Boss B, put value in your team. Get inspired by your team. Encourage your team to communicate, to brainstorm, and be open. That was Boss A. Great leaders see themselves as being in a position of service to their team members, not the controlling factor over their team. It's more of a partnership. And then when you take that position, like Boss A did, I can assure you, your team is much more likely to be loyal to you and the mission and the business as their leader. Now, like I mentioned earlier, haven't seen Boss A in 15 years or so. I mean, she hasn't been my boss in 15 years or so. I've seen her since then. But right now, today, she called, emailed, asked for a favor. Yes, ma'am. What do you want? Just because of what she did for me. Now, Boss B, first of all, she doesn't have my personal email. She probably would spell my first name wrong because there's no H in Ronda in my name, so it would probably never hit the office email if she even remembered what it was. And she certainly does not have my personal cell phone number. Boss A does. So yeah, I probably wouldn't even take her call if somebody gave her my personal number because I don't know what the number is. It's probably spam or something. So I wouldn't even take the call. And if she did finally reach me and I talked to her, she asked for a favor, I'd be going, I don't know, let me check my calendar. That's because of the type of person she was. That's because of the type of leader that she was, the way that she presented herself. So think about that when you're out there, because leaders are not only bosses. Like we've heard earlier, you know, you could be whatever. You could be a leader to somebody and not even realize it. Now, like I said, these are just 7 traits. It's not everything, but maybe it'll give you a good foundation to build off of, something to think about later when you find yourself in a potential leadership position. Remember, whatever you do, whoever you are, you're a leader to somebody else. Endeavor to be a great leader and role model. We need those, especially as women. It's not how much money or fame or looks or whatever the people have that others will remember. It's how you treat them. That's what they remember. So in closing, I'd like to leave you with one more quote. This is actually from Dolly Parton. She once said, if your actions create a legacy that inspires people to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Go out there and be excellent leaders. If you are needing help with starting a business or anything along those lines, you know, I have a table out there and I'd love to talk to you later, but thanks for having me, and it's been a great conference so far, and I'm looking forward to some more.